I love being a gentleman, and I can't help it. I love opening doors for women and letting them go through first. It sickens me how the art of being a gentleman has gone down in society. My mother taught me how to be a gentleman from a very young age, and I pride myself in being the best kind of gentleman. I remember opening a door for a woman to walk through, and she started smiling. It was clear that she hadn't been treated like that in a long time. As she walked through the door, she realized that she had ended up in the most horrid place. She was in a room with a murderer. Another time, it was a busy day and taxis were being whistled and called at by many people. I decided to get a taxi for a woman who was patiently waiting for one, and I even opened the door for her. She smiled, and it was clear that she had never been treated like this before, and was really grateful. She got into the taxi, and when I had closed the door, she knew that she had entered a car that she didn't want to enter anymore. As the car sped away, she screamed, and I was proud of myself for being a gentleman. Another time, in a university lecture, there was a female student who had to bring her baby with her. The baby was crying, so I decided to carry it for a little while. The woman was very grateful. Then I got out of the lecture room with the baby still in my arms. And to this day, I honestly can't remember where I put that baby. My husband went missing 3 months ago, but something still occupies his side of the bed. As I lay down in bed for the night, a heavy pit of dread fills my stomach. Maybe it won't visit tonight. Maybe this will be the night I can finally get some rest. I shut my eyes, and after a long time of thinking, I finally drift off into an uneasy sleep. As usual, my dreams are plagued with countless horrific scenarios about what may have been the cause of my husband's disappearance. The first dream starts off the way it always does. We're standing at the top of the hiking trail my husband and I used to walk before he disappeared, the place where he proposed to me. We sit down and enjoy the lunch we've brought. Everything is fine, like it always is, until he pulls a bottle of red wine from the cooler. "Don't drink it," I try to say, but the words in my mind never reach my lips. He opens the bottle and sips. I stare at him, praying this dream has a different ending. But of course it doesn't. It never does. His red-stained lips fall into a frown. "Poison," he says, simply, and he falls to the ground. I wake up in a cold sweat, my heart racing as I try and catch my breath. I check the time. It's 12 a.m. It won't be here yet. Again, I allow myself to fall into an uneasy sleep. I enter the second dream, and again, I'm disturbed by the familiarity of it. I am driving to the hospital with lunch for my husband. Between all his duties as a plastic surgeon, it can be difficult for him to find time to grab lunch. I enter the hospital, and it's completely empty. It's dark too, except for a bright light at the end of the corridor. I shouldn't go in there, but I'm not in control of my body. I arrive and open the door. My husband is lying in bed, with bandages and bruises all over his body. A man I've never seen before enters the room behind me.
"We've made some improvements,"
is all he says, and the room goes dark. I wake up once more and stare at the clock beside my bed. 2 a.m. it says. It won't be here yet. I fall asleep once more, and the third dream enters my mind. This one is my least favorite. The illusion of normality always tricks me. I am home, making dinner for myself. I'm alone when there comes a hard, urgent knock at the door. I hate this part, and I don't want to open the door. But once more, I am not in control of my body. I walk slowly towards the door, and with a heavy sigh, I open it. It's my husband. I am overcome with joy. I reach to hug him, but when I do, I realize something that makes my heart drop. Why would he knock if this is his own home? He always comes straight in. Never once has he knocked for me to let him in. Only guests knock. I pull away, and once I do, his face changes into a sad, wounded look. I thought you'd be happy I'm home, he says. And finally, I wake up once more. I check the clock. 3:59 a.m. It will be here soon. I shut my eyes and hold my breath. I've learnt that if I can stay still, make no noise, it will go away. The clock strikes 4 a.m. and the door to my bedroom opens, like clockwork. Heavy footsteps find their way to the other side of the bed, and I feel its weight next to me. Not a word, not a sound, just the slow and steady sound of breathing next to me. I shut my eyes. Don't move, don't breathe, don't think, I remind myself. I stay this way for a while, and I feel it rise from the bed, and hear its footsteps head back towards the door. I feel relieved and almost let out a sigh, but doing so would blow my cover. But then I feel a tickle in my nose. No, this can't be happening. I try so hard to contain it. I stay frozen, praying it hasn't heard me, but of course, it has. I sit up in bed, clutching my bedsheets tightly in my fist.
What do you want? I shout. Why do you keep coming here?
It turns to face me, and the ambient light allows me to make out the feature of its face. It looks familiar. The same wounded look as in my dream comes across its face.
I thought you'd be happy I'm home,
the thing says. But unlike in my dreams, I will not allow myself to be deceived. It is not my husband. The clock ticks. I sit there in the chair in a room with whitewashed walls. Empty, aside from that one ticking clock. The door opens, and a doctor comes in. He's wearing a lab coat, the same color as the walls, and in his hands he is holding a notepad. He stands across from me, and for a while we just look at each other in silence. I break it. You want me to tell you my story again? The doctor nods. I sigh and revisit memories I'd rather want closed. It was like any other Saturday night. Often my friends and I would get blitz in some sketchy pub and wake up in various different locations throughout town the next day. Dangerous, yeah. We were idiots, with little else to do. We believed we were invincible, untouchable, and that spending what time we did have, drinking to oblivion. Except this Saturday, we had managed to strike lucky, and Andrew had found 2 girls who were willing to help us in our dumbass escapades. Normally, there were 3 of us: Andrew, Jaden, and me, Wayne. Andrew had met the girls at another party the day before, and claimed that they were willing to sleep with just about anyone. I felt a little uneasy, but they seemed like good people, humorous with just a little sass. By 6, we were already on our way downtown, a little tipsy from drinking prior, but ready for a whole lot more. The venue was exactly our kind, loud, packed, and even a little violent. I was a little interested in Rachel, one of the girls, and I think she was a little into me as well, catching her occasional glance. Andrew and Jaden were nowhere to be seen, and neither was Amy, the other girl. I only assumed what was already on my mind. So, with just the 2 of us, we partied for another few hours. It was 11 by the time Rachel and I had left. The police had turned up, and had to break up the more rowdy guys. At this point, I was a little concerned as to where my friends were, but my mind was only focused on one thing. She led me to a more secluded area behind the portaloos. Not exactly the most romantic area, but I was already getting ready. Before my belt came undone, Rachel laughed and poured out a whiskey she had hidden in her bag. To the brim, she handed a glass to me, and I downed it without even thinking. Within moments, my head began to pound. Ignoring it, I tried to walk. My legs were buckling as I did so. My immediate thought was that I was so drunk I was about to pass out. But this was a little different. Suddenly, there was only darkness. What woke me wasn't the wind, or some hobo pissing on my face as usual, but the freezing water that had covered me up to the neck. In little islands, ice cubes floated around my bathtub I was in, and the realization of just how cold it was sent a shockwave through my system. I looked around, trying to rise up. It was an absolutely disgusting bathroom, every towel smeared with grease, the toilet overflowing. The stench was unbearable. Getting out of the bathtub was the easy part. The hard part was actually standing up. Shivering, I looked down and almost fainted. Scars dotted every part of my body, poorly made stitches holding together festering wounds. The water had served to drown out the pain, and now that I was out, it came back again, agonizingly. Every cut seemed to reverberate. I clenched my teeth and opened the door. The corridor I found myself in seemed much longer than it was. With each step, I made my way towards the stairwell 1,000 feet away. Blood splattered on the walls, drag marks on the floorboards. I felt an urge to vomit, swallowing it hard instead, the bile burning my throat. I made my way downstairs, creaking and almost stumbling several times. The nakedness of my body seemed so unimportant, I just wanted to get out. When I finally made my way to the bottom, I froze. I heard a familiar voice. It was Rachel, laughing hoarsely. Stupidly, I went towards the sound. If she was in trouble, I had the naive thought that I could save her. Last night's events were still fuzzy, and there were some thoughts I couldn't recognize. Turning a corner, I automatically ran the opposite direction. It was only for a split second, but that was all I needed. It was a dining room, and sprawled out onto the table was Andrew. Or what was Andrew? The only thing I could recognize was his face. The rest of his body seemed almost carved out. Surrounding him were various people in surgical clothing, and at the forefront of it all, Rachel, scalpel in one hand, another burrowing into Andrew's chest. The worst part? His eyes bore into me, and they looked more alive than ever, bloodshot and filled with fear. I eventually found my way to the front door, and to my relief, it opened. I heard a yell from behind, but I ignored it and hobbled on, with no aim. I was struggling to see even a few feet ahead of me. The pain began to take hold, until once again, there was only total darkness. I awoke again, but this time in this hospital. I never did find out what happened to Jaden, and I don't want to know. In fact, I want to forget this whole thing, but I don't think I ever will. Report. Patient has not remembered any of the faces of the dissection group, aside from one. She is to be terminated immediately. Successful surgery on said patient has yielded 1 kidney, 1 lung, most of the liver, various assortments. Full dissection is to be conducted in the next week. Overall estimated profit, $500,000. It all began when rumours passed down at recess. Apparently we were going to have a new classmate. Our teacher confirmed the rumours. There was a new student coming from Japan. However, she didn't know much else. And thus, the fated Friday of March 2012, she arrived. There was a small crowd gathered around her.
My name is Hikari. It's a pleasure to meet you all,
She said. According to her, she had moved to our town as her wealthy parents were opening a Japanese restaurant chain here in America. So our town would be the location of the first restaurant. Hikari was slim and relatively tall. She had brown almond eyes and short brown hair. She was also wearing blue shorts and a pink Hello Kitty shirt. Boys and girls alike became instant fans, flooding her with compliments. Hikari wanted to reply to everyone, but she didn't know what to say. She was completely overwhelmed. "Hello, I'm Maria. Nice to meet you." I approached her. The chit-chat paused. Everyone but Hikari cringed and stared at me like they didn't want me to be there. I was feeling pretty uncomfortable.
Hikari doesn't have time for losers like you, Maria. Now scram!
No, it's okay. She can stay if she wants to,
Hikari uttered. But I'd had enough. I left in silence. My feelings towards Hikari were peculiar. I didn't hate her, and she even seemed nice enough to let me stay. But she was with toxic people who only pretended to be her friends because she was attractive and wealthy. I'd been living in the US since I was 5 years old, originally coming from Spain. However, my reception here in America was very different from Hikari's. Compared to her, I wasn't the most attractive girl, and I'd come from an average suburban family. I had niche hobbies like video games and horror literature. I was pretty good at history and Spanish, thanks to my country of origin. But no one cared about those subjects. You could become popular if you were sporty, artistic, or just straight up wealthy. You know, the usual. I didn't have any of those traits. I was just your typical nerd, who everyone knew, but no one cared about. I was on my way to the store when I saw a bunch of kids from school roaming around the town with Hikari.
"Hey Maria,"
she said, waving at me. The other kids were telling her to ignore me as I awkwardly waved back. I could tell that she wanted to be friends, but she was letting herself be manipulated by those kids. Couldn't she see her so-called friends were clearly toxic? Was she really that weak-minded? The next day, I was curled up on my couch reading a horror novel, when I was startled by the sound of my doorbell. I opened the door. It was Hikari. "Hikari, what a surprise," I spoke. "Hi Maria. I came to say sorry." "Sorry for what?" "For not paying much attention to you as I should have. I want to be your friend, Maria. I really do. But what? I also want to be with the others." "Hikari, those people are not your friends. They only pretend to like you because you're rich and attractive. They only see you as a mere object to make themselves feel important." But I need them." But it didn't sound like a reply. It was more like she was trying to convince herself. "Trust me, you don't. Anyways, wanna come in?" I spoke. She nodded after snapping out of a little trance, entering the house. It turned out that we had plenty of things in common. She was also very passionate about history and horror. She was really into monsters from a Japanese mythology called yokai. She even recommended me several books about them. So I recommended her the novel I was reading in return. I had a blast that afternoon. When I had first met her, I thought she was one of those kids that were too cool for me, but she had gone out of her way to come and hang out with me. I felt amazing. A few hours later. "It's getting late. I have to go home to prepare for the yokai party." "What party?" "I've organised a yokai-themed party at my parents' new restaurant tomorrow. I've invited every kid I met yesterday." "Really? Awesome. I've never been to a Japanese restaurant." "I'm sorry, Maria, but you're not invited." "What? But why?" I felt disappointed. I thought Hikari was my friend. I could only guess that her toxic friends were behind this.
Don't get me wrong, Maria. You're awesome and a true friend, unlike the others. Then why can't I come? I don't understand. Don't worry. I don't expect you to understand. Goodbye,
she said. The plethora of conflicting emotions I felt was hard to describe. It was a strange mix of disappointment, betrayal, and confusion. I checked Instagram the following day. A girl who'd been invited to Hikari's party posted a picture of herself and her friends on their way to the restaurant, along with the caption, "On our way to the first Japanese party. See you all there. Hikari rules. Hashtag Hikari. Hashtag yokai." Another kid posted the location, except there was something off about it. According to the post, the party took place in the outskirts of town. I was pretty sure that there weren't any restaurants there. I looked on Google Maps. Nothing. The nearest Japanese restaurant was miles away. The only building that matched the coordinates was an abandoned warehouse. I was extremely confused, without a clue about the situation. Why would Hikari lie about her restaurant and lure everyone to a warehouse? This couldn't be an accident. I remember how strange she had acted when we were talking about the party the day prior. It was clear she was up to something, so I was going to get to the bottom of it. I left home and headed to the supposed party's location using Google Maps. After 20 minutes, I spotted a small hill in the distance with what looked like an old building at the top. I paused for a moment to check the location on my phone. This was it. Suddenly, I heard loud echoing screams seemingly coming from the forest. I rushed up there determined to find out the truth. I slowly approached the abandoned warehouse at the top. I could hear weird noises coming from inside. It sounded like something was being aggressively torn apart while emitting some kind of animalistic growl. I peeked through a window. I nearly passed out when I saw Hikari hunched over a pile of corpses that were laying on the floor as she tore them apart like a hungry scavenger. "Hikari?" I whispered, completely frozen in terror. Hikari immediately dropped what she was doing and eerily turned her head towards me. Her appearance had changed. Her pupils were now vertical and thin, almost like a snake's. Her teeth were abnormally sharp. They looked as if they had been specially designed to tear apart human flesh. She stood up and slowly advanced towards me. Her eyes were locked on me like those of a hawk, her shirt soaked with the blood of her foolish victims. Without a second thought, I frantically descended down the hill as I screamed in horror. I wasn't even sure if she was chasing me, but I kept going. My vision blurred as the wind pressed against my eyes. Hikari's ear-piercing roar was the last thing that I'd ever hear from her. The kids who were last seen on their way to Hikari's party were never found, neither dead nor alive. Hikari had also disappeared. It was as if she had never existed. After about a week, the teacher entered the classroom, accompanied by a boy I'd never seen before. "Good morning, everyone. This is your new Japanese classmate. Meet Hiro." Hiro introduced himself to the class as I stared in absolute confusion. For security reasons, my name will be Logan, and this story happened when I was about to graduate from middle school in 2015. I was taking my finals that I studied so hard for in order to finish off middle school. Where I'm from, the test is about 4.5 hours long. After the second hour during the test, I had the urge to use the bathroom. I asked the teacher if I could go, and he let me go to the bathroom. I was in a stall doing my business. After finishing up, I washed my hands, dried them up, and was on my way back to the testing room. As I was near the exit of the bathroom, the main office administrator came on the loudspeaker, saying, "Attention teachers and students, lock your doors, close all the blinds. We are going into lockdown. This is not a drill." I got the chills hearing that. I knew I wouldn't be able to make it back to my testing room,
because it was on the other side of the hall, and half of the classroom doors were empty and locked, so I couldn't make it back. I heard about 4 or 5 gunshots from the downstairs of the school, and as I heard them, I shut the bathroom door, went back to the stall, and locked it as fast as possible. There was silence in the bathroom and in the hallway, until...
Everyone, come out! I'm just gonna kill you!
As soon as he said that, I started crying in fear, thinking that the intruder heard me. He started walking towards the bathroom. Suddenly, I heard the school police officer. "Police, drop your weapon and put your hands where I can see them." I heard the intruder's gun drop to the floor. He then yelled at the top of his lungs. There were 2 gunshots and a scream of agony. Thankfully, the gunshot came from the officer. The main office administrator again came on the loudspeaker saying, "All clear. All teachers can resume testing. I repeat, all teachers can resume testing." I then heard the police officer saying, "Police, the coast is clear." I opened the door to the bathroom and the officer asked me, "Are you okay, Logan?" I replied with a yes. Soon, he escorted me back to my classroom, where I continued to do the test. I'm just glad that the officer caught and shot the intruder, because if it wasn't for the officer, I wouldn't be here to tell this story.
Today is the day I set off early this morning with my best friend John to go skydiving for the first time. And now, here I am, hurtling towards the ground at 120 miles per hour, with my parachute cord cut. Certain death awaits. In John's coat pocket is the scissors it was cut with, nestled beside his mobile phone, with a text message to my wife filling her in on his plan. John has been having an affair with her for the past few months. I would never have thought that John would do something like this to me, but I might as well make the most of how I end things. It's just a pity that I won't be around to see the look on his face when he finds those little surprises in his coat pocket. My name is Joseph, and I was traumatized at 14 years old. I was out in the park playing ball with my friends, who we will call Ivan, Vlad, and Nikita. Vlad had to go and study, so he left, and a few hours later, Nikita went home too. Instead, Ivan and I decided to stay for a little while longer, and continued playing ball for a few hours, until it was 11 o'clock. In the pitch black, we walked home, worried more of our parents' anger than the dangers of the night. We were leaving the empty park when a boy who was about 16 stopped us. He wore all black clothing, which weirdly contrasted his neon football boots. He introduced himself as Draven and asked if I wanted to play. Immediately, I felt uncomfortable and was about to respectfully decline and just walk past when Ivan stopped me and said that there was no harm in staying for another hour, because our parents would be mad either way after all. I reluctantly agreed to play with him until midnight. We started playing ball, and surprisingly Draven had an awesome left foot. We also struck up a conversation, and we learned that Draven went to a school nearby. He loved playing football and video games, as well as sneaking out at night to practice football. He had aspirations to make it to the big leagues, and said that it was impossible without putting in the hard work. He seemed interesting and very polite, and friendly as well. I started to like Draven, and Ivan seemed to adore him. Eventually, when Ivan and I were about to go, as it struck midnight, Draven offered us some chewing gum. Ivan grabbed it out of his hand and gnawed away. I was a bit cautious at first, but gave in. The gum felt weird. It had me want to have it more. I looked over to Ivan, whose eye was a little twitchy. Instinctively, I asked if he had any more. Draven then said that he had hundreds of those gums at his house, and that he was also throwing a little party. If we came, he could give us some more. We agreed and left. He led us through the park into the dark forest, and we walked through for what seemed like over an hour before we reached a rundown, shabby, broken, abandoned shack with a black van that was parked right in front of the house. But sure enough, we could hear loud music, the windows flashing with colors, and even what seemed like a woman's yelling. We walked inside the house. Before me was a group of men, much older and much bigger than Ivan and I, each holding an implement of pain, whether it was a bat, crowbar, or rope. They loomed over us, and one grabbed Ivan's wrist. That's when I bolted out of the front door. I had zero hesitation. It was only my quick reflexes which had saved me that night. I didn't stop running until I reached my house, and it was only then that I realized that I left Ivan behind. I pounded at my door and fell into my dad's arms, sobbing. The rest of my family had come downstairs, curious as to what the ruckus was all about. I told them in hushed whispers of what had happened, and immediately phoned Ivan's parents and then the police. They investigated the building and found nothing, claiming that the owner of the house had died some time ago. I recounted what I had seen to them, and with this information, they launched a search across the entire woods. Sure enough, they eventually found a recently dug hole where they uncovered the bodies of over 100 youths, the youngest being 4. Ivan had been beaten badly and his body used to store drugs. They even found my other friend Vlad. He had been killed just an hour before Ivan. But what scared me the most was the note that had been left on my pillow the next night. In bloody writing, the words, "You were lucky." I live in Finland in a fairly small city, and this happened to me a year ago when I was 14. So it was Friday evening, and on every Friday our mum lets us go to the store and buy candy. So me and my 12-year-old sister left our house to go to the store, although it was dark outside. We made our way to the closest store, which was over a mile away. While walking at some point, there was a man behind us walking the same way, but I didn't think much about it at the time. He could have been going to the same store as us anyway. So I continued chatting with my sister, while the man was behind us at a distance. We got to the store with no complications. We took our time selecting our candy, and got to the register to pay. While I was packing the candy in my backpack, I saw this man buying only a chocolate bar. A pretty far way to go for a chocolate bar, I thought, and at this point, my suspicions started to rise. I got out of the store with my sister and we started making our way back. We walked for a while and I quickly glanced at my back, and the man was still there, following us. I took a look at my sister, who seemed totally unaware about the man's presence. We continued our walk, and up ahead of us was an unlit dirt road that continued for a good part of the trip, so I looked back again, and there was the man about 60 feet away. At this point, I was almost certain that he was following us, because on our way to the store, he did not walk this part of the way. The dirt road goes through a forest, and it has a curve at the start of it. Once we got to the curve, I looked back and noticed that the man couldn't see us, so I pulled my sister to the woods and we ducked down. My sister tried to say something, but I just whispered, "Stay quiet," to her as I waited for the man to come. I could see the man's shadow coming down the road, and he started looking for us. He walked back and forth on the road. Now I was 100% certain that he was following us all that time. My heart was racing as I tried to be as quiet as possible. The man didn't find us, but continued running forwards. We stayed in the forest for a while, before getting the courage to come out. We walked the rest of the way home with no problems and got to our house. We ate our candy and had a good evening, but that really did bother me for a while, and especially my sister. Thinking about this still gives me chills, and the thought of getting caught in that situation creeps me, and I try not to think about it. I wouldn't want to meet this guy again.
When most people blow out candles on their birthday, it's just a simple glow. On my birthday, it's always a struggle to drag in all of the candles, because the older you get, the more candles you need. We have finally gotten the 15th candle to be burnt along with the other crying, whimpering and desperate candles to commemorate my 15th birthday. As well as blowing out the candles, I have to use a water hose. The smell of burnt bodies is another negative, but when the cake comes out, it's all worth it.